Hello and welcome to the Tea and a Buddy podcast with me, Dominic.
And me, Erica.
Today's episode, well, it's about a TV show that we are currently getting into.
Yes. The show we're talking about is Outlander.
Outlander. Have you seen it, everybody?
Yeah.
And I'm sure most of you who are self-quarantining right now are probably looking for shows to watch. And this is a good one. We're only on the first season so far, so no spoilers.
Yeah.
Don't you be giving us spoilers, you cheeky monkeys.
So if you're into shows like Poldark,
time travel stuff, Goodnight Sweetheart.
Yeah, any kind of period dramas. Also a little bit fantasy, since there is time travel element.
The time travel element, yeah, that's the same thing as Goodnight Sweetheart, so...
Yeah, so it's originally set in the 40s.
Yeah. It's based on a series of books, the Outlander series, written by Diana Gabaldon, who was an American author.
Which we have not read.
We haven't read any of the books
We tend to, with these shows that we get into that are based on books, it seems like we then go back and read the books.
We did that with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know...
You did it with Hornblower.
Hornblower, yeah. I mean, I got into the series of Hornblower. And then I decided, I'm going to read the books because they didn't finish them.
Yeah.
Come on, Ioan Griffith. Do your duty and pick up the Hornblower series and make sure Ioan Griffith is in title role. And if you can, get back the whole cast.
Hornblower is also set in the 1700s, like Outlander, which we actually haven't mentioned that yet. Yeah. So go ahead and continue.
Well, let's give you a little bit of background here, everybody. Let's just take it back. So it's set on these
books. The books are basically like... what do they call it? Well, to me, at the beginning, the first
historical
episode...
fiction.
Well, historical fiction. But they're also a bit like... I think they call them bodice-ripping romance novels.
Romance novel, yeah. It's very romance novel.
But the bodice-ripping is, like, in reference to the fact that it's set in a period...
A period drama where they had a bodice. Yes. Where they wanted to see a body come out of a bodice.
So it's a little bit that. And at first, the first episode, I was like, all right, this is a bit too romance novel-y.
It's a bit too romance novel-y, you know, Mills and Boon, you know the type. I don't know what they were. Mills and Boon were a popular publisher of romance novels.
Yeah.
My mother would take me to this bookshop in Torquay where we lived, and, you know, it was called the Book Barn. And they'd have all these old books there, and I remember, you know, she knew the bookstore owner and stuff, and they'd get chatting, and I'd just be kind of wandering around looking at all the books, and they had like an entire section devoted to Mills and Boon romance novels, and I just kind of, even when I was a kid, I was like 5 or 6 years old, you know, I just remember looking at them going, what is that, you know, because it's just kind of like they were all like, it's all like a man, you know, he's like long hair and Fabio type, you know, Fabian, whatever you call them. Chest kind of coming out of his shirt, and you know, he's like billowing shirt, and this woman like, oh, you know, her bodice ripped.
Yeah,
you know?
Fabio was the typical
Don Juan type figure.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about, don't you? He had long blonde hair. I think he's Italian. I'm not sure, but big and muscly, long blonde hair. And he was like on the cut. That's what he was known for.
When though?
In the 90s.
Oh, the 90s.
Early 90s, late 80s, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going back further because, you know, this is like a period type thing. Because they're all kind of period kind of things, aren't they?
I mean, you had like, again, we have a reputation, you guys, for going like off topic.
Well, so this isn't off topic, you know, because it's kind of in that genre.
Yeah,
it is, and that's the fans of Outlander are primarily those types of people who enjoy that.
I guess so.
Works of fiction.
The ones that I know of that were really popular, and I don't think she wrote any period ones. I could be completely wrong though. Danielle Steele. She was our biggest, most recent romance novelist. I mean,
Barbara. What was her name? Barbara Taylor Bradford. Something. There was one in Britain who had like my Barbara.
Oh, Barbara. Yeah, I do know that name too.
That was Barbara Taylor Bradford. Barbara. Yeah, I mean,
No, I was not.
Jackie Collins.
Yeah,
she did
Jackie
a series
Collins.
of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They were just basically erotic novels.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think they were period dramas, but of course it's like there's like certain, women authors.
Which we're not knocking that. I mean, if that's
not knocking that. If you're into that, that's great.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no,
there's
no problem.
No shame, no judgment,
yeah,
bro.
But that is definitely what I kind of felt like this was leaning toward in the first episode. We're on like the 5th or 6th or 7th, maybe even episode
of the first season. Yeah, because they ordered like 16 episodes, I think.
And it has become more historical based.
It's there's like there's the element of history.
Yeah, she's starting to see things happen in history that she knows about, and she knows what's going to happen. And I'm more into that. I'm more into the historical aspect.
Into the Fabio and
bodice ripping. As long as it's not like super predictable, like
maybe
Hallmark
sometimes
style.
Hallmark. Lifetime movie. The Outlander series is written by Diana Gabaldon. And it focuses on 20th century British Army nurse Claire Randall, who, with her husband Frank, they go up to Scotland for, after the end of the war in 1946. And they're just on holiday. And he's a historian, her husband. So he's talking about, this area was covered in Jacobite risings and the British Army were here.
They're just they've just gotten back together, right, after the war. And they're just
reconnected,
yeah.
And so they go on this driving holiday, and he takes her around this area of the Highlands in Scotland.
This actress, by the way, guys, do you know her name? Do we know her name?
Katrina Balfe.
Okay, she's absolutely gorgeous.
Irish actress.
Just as
she's a model. She was a prolific model for Michael Kors and everyone.
Okay, yeah. She looks like
she's walked the runway.
And the guy who plays her husband was in Game of Thrones. He was
Tobias Menzies, or Tobias Menzies. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his last. He was Tully.
Yeah, he was her brother.
He was Lord Tully.
He was the Stark's uncle.
He's also in The Crown as Prince Philip.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm. The 3rd series.
Yeah,
and I think he's going to be in the next one too. But anyway, it's about this British Army nurse from the 40s, Claire Randall, and she time travels to 18th century Scotland during the time of the Jacobite Rising in 1745, and finds adventure and romance with the dashing Jamie Fraser. And so far there have been 8 out of her planned 10 books.
Wow.
Because she's done 8 of them already.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the 8th was released at the time the series started, so there's been kind of like a long break.
Oh gosh.
The classic George R.R. Martin type thing. But she's working on the 9th one right now. I don't know when that's going to be released. But of course, she wrote these like in the 90s. These books, and it went do.
So that is like George R.R. Martin. I mean, that's when he wrote Game of Thrones as well.
And then, it's like she hasn't finished the series yet, but of course now that the Outlander series is out and they're writing and, there's been 5 seasons of it and there's fans and everything, she's getting, the money's rolling in, I'm presuming. And it's just like...
There's not a lot of motivation
There's not a lot of motivation there, except to people going... When's the next one coming out?
Oh my God. Could you imagine being a writer like that?
It's kind of the same thing with J.K. Rowling. Yeah. She wrote the first 2 or 3 books, and then the movies were made. Mm-hmm. And then
J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, yeah. And it was just like, it's just like, got all this money now. I don't need this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's a lot of pressure, though. I would not like to be in that position. You have a sizable audience.
You start writing these books. You're a writer and you start writing these books, you write these novels and they get published and it's like, oh, it's all right. They're not too famous or whatever, and you write another one.
You're happy just to be published.
Happy just to be published, happy writing them, and then a TV show comes along and goes, we want to turn those books into a TV show or a film.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that thing just explodes.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, well, I don't need to write the rest of them. I'll take a break now because I've been so busy promoting the TV show because it's based on that, or consulting, because she's a consultant, obviously, on the TV show.
Yeah.
And it was commissioned by Starz, the Starz network, in 2014, and it's now into its 5th season. Katrina Balfe plays Claire, and Sam Heughan is Jamie.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah.
And he actually is Scottish, right? I think we looked him up.
He's actually Scottish.
There's so many people in this show who are portraying Scottish people, and they're not actually Scottish. And to me, most of their accents are pretty good. But you did point out someone who was... You were like, you knew as soon as she opened her mouth, you were like, she is not, this actress
she's a Dutch actress.
Scottish.
She's a Dutch actress. It's funny because Katrina Balfe is Irish. She's got like an Irish lilt naturally, you know?
Yeah.
I think she's lived over here for years though, so it's kind of like thing. But she's portraying an English nurse.
Yeah.
And that's what...
she's got a very posh, upper class kind of...
That's what the
English
author...
accent.
Wanted to do with her character is like, oh, you know, she's just this English woman and these like kilted Scotsmen, you know, around all these kilted Scotsmen.
Yeah.
And, you know, being all because originally
being
all Scottish and, you know, clansmen and against those damn English. It's funny because I think she originally started writing the books with the character of Jamie Fraser as the main character. And just, you know, like him. But then when she started writing her female character, she just kind of took over the lead and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, you know, it became all about her and Jamie, you know.
Yeah.
The setting of the 18th century, because, you know, you'd think that's a bit of an odd time for an American writer to set a story in.
Oh, she's American.
She's from Arizona. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, wow. That's cool.
The setting of 18th century Scotland for the novel was inspired when Diana Gabaldon saw a rerun on PBS of a Doctor Who serial.
Oh, interesting.
From 1969 entitled The War Games, and was fascinated by Fraser Hines' portrayal of the Doctor's companion Jamie McCrimmon. Doctor Who fans will know, you know, the classic Who fans will know that Patrick Troughton was the Doctor at this time. And he had a companion, Jamie McCrimmon, who was a kilted Scotsman from the year 1745 who travelled with him. And so she kind of fell in love with him a little bit, you know, because he was kilted and he was that, like, you know, this, like, outlandish, like, chivalrous, tartaned up guy, you know, who's always, like, gotta protect the women even though they can protect themselves, you know. So she was like, oh, yeah, you know, the kilt and everything, I like that, you know, so I'm just gonna... And that inspired her to, like, set the whole thing, so...
Yeah.
And I think Fraser Hines, who plays... I know the actor from Emmerdale, which was a soap in Britain. Well, it's still going, but he was on the soap for years, and I obviously had no idea that he was on Doctor Who, because Doctor Who, that was years ago.
Yeah.
And I think the War Games, that serial, was his final appearance as Jamie McCrimmon, you know?
Okay, yeah.
But it's funny because I think he got a role in Outlander.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, he's not Scottish, Fraser Hines. He's an English actor, but, you know, he's playing a wee Scotsman, you know.
Yeah, and so he must be older now if that was from 1969. So.
Oh, well, yes, he's older, obviously. Yeah, he was a kid back then. Yeah, and, you know, people think, oh, Jamie... She called the character James, you know... of James Fraser after Jamie McCrimmon, and everybody thought, oh, well, his name is Fraser because of the actor, and she said, no, that was just a coincidence.
Oh, yeah.
Because PBS cut off the credits of all stuff, and she never knew who the actors were.
Oh, that's really weird.
So, it's like, you know, one of these things years later that's like, oh, yeah, I didn't know his name, the actor's name, until years later, because PBS, her station cut off the credits, you know, because they want to get on to the next show. They do that here too, don't they? They minimize
Barbara Cartwright.
Barbara Cartwright? Oh, we're back on that, are we?
Cartland. Cartwright?
Barbara Cartland. Yes, Cartland. Okay. We're going to pause this and we're going to do a quick Google search.
If you guys... My brain just works like that, okay? I wasn't consciously thinking about it, but the name just popped into my head. It's like Barbara Cartwright, Barbara Cartland. What we were talking about previously. I'm referring to romance novelists, that is. Oh, Barbara Taylor Bradford. So you had a different person named Barbara.
Barbara, oh, yes.
Okay, this is not the one that I was talking about.
Yeah. A woman of substance, yeah. I mean, I don't know if they're kind of like...
Okay. Mine is Barbara Cartland, though. I think it's Cartland, not Cartwright. Okay, so there was a British Barbara Taylor Bradford writer, and
Barbara Cartland.
Oh,
yeah,
she's
wrote,
British as well.
Yeah, the name sounds familiar. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's her. Yeah, I remember her.
Okay.
She looked like
Barbara
that.
Cartland. Okay. Anyway, sorry. We can
Yes.
get back.
We can get back to Outlander.
About. Yes.
So talking about Outlander here.
Oh my gosh.
Barbara Cartland, Barbara Taylor Bradford, Barbara, whoever.
Outlander.
Outlander, yes.
Yeah.
That's the one. And it's funny, you know, it's like she never knew who he was until years later.
Yeah, that's like fate.
It's like fate, yeah. And you know, he had a starring role. Well, I don't know if it was a starring role. It was a role in the series as someone else, you know.
Mm.
I think in the 3rd season, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of we're going to talk about the whole setting of Outlander.
Yeah.
And what was going on at that time, the Jacobite Rising, because the Jacobite Rising.
So give a little bit of history, like.
Well, Scotland joined England and Wales to become the United Kingdom of Great Britain in 1707. That's when it was like ratified by treaty and everything.
Okay.
And
they have not wanted to be part of Great Britain since that moment.
A lot of them didn't, yes, because who was on the throne in 1745 was George II, who was George III's father. And George III is obviously the Mad King George, and the madness of King George. Mm-hmm. But George II was on the throne then, and they were the House of Hanover. And it's famous that, you know, the Stuart throne was like usurped, you know, from that.
Okay.
Years before. I think Mary Queen of Scots, I think, was the last one.
Okay.
And ever since then, you know, Scotland had its own king, like James I and everything. But when they got together, it was like King George rules you all.
Right,
you know?
right.
And it's the British kingdom, and that's it, you know.
Yeah.
But, of course, there's a lot of Scots who didn't like this. You know, they wanted, who was it? James Edward Stuart, which was the Old Pretender, they called him. Mm-hmm. He wanted the throne back. And so his son, who was Charles Edward Stuart, yeah.
The English called him the Pretender.
Yeah, the English called him the Pretender, right. Yeah, the Old Pretender. And they called Charles Edward, his son, the Young Pretender. He was desperate to restore the House of Stuart to the throne. Mm-hmm. So he started gaining support from all the Scots, saying, oh, you know, those terrible Sassenachs, you know, there's terrible English, you know, the British army, terrible. Yeah. You know, we want our homeland back. We want a Stuart on the throne. And right. Like, yeah, okay then. And that's became like the Jacobite movement.
Why were they called the Jacobites, do you know?
It's kind of, they were called the Jacobites because it's like the Latin for James. Okay. And the movement emerged from the overthrow of the Catholic king, James VII of Scotland. Okay. And he was the James II of England. It's just really... Yeah, it's like really complicated to sort all that out.
You need a family tree.
You need a family tree to figure out who was what of what country until they finally unified. Yeah. And...
Because the royal family of Scotland was related to the royal family of England,
yes, they were. And, you know, Scotland and England had separate laws. And even when they unified in 1707, the laws were separate. That's why... today it's famous, you know, like it still continues to this day. The most famous of these differences is like the law of marriage. You know, like in England you had to be a certain age and you had to have parental consent to marry. Right. That's why a lot of English and Welsh couples were eloping to Gretna Green, which was a border town. Yeah. To get married. Because they didn't have, in Scotland you don't have to have parental consent and you can marry at 16.
And you can marry anywhere. It didn't have to be you could marry on the top of a hill. Or...
You can marry anywhere, yes.
Yeah, which I think you and I have discussed before.
The Church of Scotland had that kind of law that you didn't have to get married in a church either. So, you know, that's still existed well into like the 20th and will still exists now, but I think in England and Wales that law's been relaxed and people can get married wherever now and stuff, you know. And they don't have to have parental consent or something, whatever.
Well, as long as they're of legal age.
As long as they're legal age, yeah. And because, you know, there was a lot of young teenagers going, yeah, let's get married, this is the greatest thing ever, you know.
Well, there was a lot of, at that time particularly, people like kind of selling their daughters off, or
selling their daughters off for a packet of biscuits,
or like a girl would go off with a much older man for
a lord,
you know, whatever reason, and the parents would not necessarily approve, I guess.
Yeah,
you know, just
there was all that kind of stuff going on. But yeah, getting back to like the Jacobite movement. Because the overthrow of the Catholic King James VII of Scotland and he was the second of England, and it was in favour of his Protestant daughter and son-in-law Mary II and William of Orange during the Glorious Revolution of 1688 to 89. Jacobites, which were named after the Latin for James, Jacobus, sought to restore James and his heirs to the British and Irish thrones.
James and his hairs, yes.
James and his heirs, yeah. James and his heirs.
Is that how you pronounce it? You pronounce it hairs?
James and his hairs, yeah, his hair. Son and hair.
Heirs, we say.
Or son and heir. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you say heir, yeah, I mean, I say hair.
Oh, you British people and your pronunciations.
You slimy people and your pronunciations. But, so there was a series of, like, major rebellions throughout, but the last of which was in 1745, and that culminated in the Battle of Culloden, which is where our dear Claire Randall has gone back to, you know, in the years. They're only like 3 months away from it, where we are right now. And
she remembers in the first series of this show talking with her husband about that particular battle and what happened.
Well, yes, I mean, and then, you know, like, spoiler.
Bit of spoiler here if you haven't seen it.
If you haven't seen it, she tries to, you know, she remembers it, and then, because she's just with them for a long time, with the clansmen, Clan Mackenzie, because she's found in 1745 by an ancestor of her husband who's a captain in the British Army, Black Jack Randall.
Yeah.
Who's terrible.
Yeah. Scummy guy.
Really nice guy. But she gets saved by, like, clansmen, the Clan Mackenzie, who
seem all rough and
dirty, but they're like, you know, the best group of Scots people, you know, and they're wearing kilts and they're all like,
they're wearing kilts, they're all right.
They're wearing kilts, they're all right. They got eyebrows, you know, and it's just she ends up with them as, like, because she's a nurse, she can heal, and, you know, she's got kind of like crazy ideas because she's from the future and all this kind of stuff, you know. So she's figuring out how to use 18th century tech to apply 20th century medicine, you know, like asthma and all that kind of stuff.
And all the while, she's wanting to get back home.
She's wanting to get back home, and she's figured out, that where I came in, these stones, I can get back. But of course,
she thinks anyway.
And
we don't know because we haven't seen it.
And of course, you know, like there's the Jacobite rising kind of going on, and she thinks like they're all just like, you know, she thinks this clan is like. At first, she thinks they're just like, ripping people off and stuff, you know, on rent
pulling
and stuff, pulling scams for rent.
The leader of the clan of
the war chief,
that she's with, she thinks he's just kind of screwing over his brother, who is the lord of the castle, the
laird. But it transpires actually he's trying to raise money for the Jacobite army, and they believe in their, like, and then people think, you know, like, people easily to simplify, the Jacobites just wanted independence, but it was actually they wanted to restore the throne.
Yeah. I think it's really important to note that in America, we are not, I think the majority of Americans are not really aware of the Scottish-English divide.
It's something that's been around for a long time. I mean, there's a Welsh-English divide, obviously, too, but
yeah,
it's smaller.
I think we don't really think about it, because obviously, it's not our country, it's not happening over here, and a lot of people don't even really understand that Scotland, England, and Wales are separate. You know what I mean? It's
they're on the same island, but they're pretty separate.
Yeah,
places.
And so it's interesting, and I think maybe even a bit confusing for Americans, possibly. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, who don't know the history and the divide, just the divide, the cultural divide, the history of why Scottish people don't necessarily like English people and vice versa. And that's not true for all of them nowadays. I would say not true for the majority of them, probably. But there definitely still, to this day, are Scottish and English people who
love to stoke the divide and go, oh, they're English, aren't they?
Oh, they're English.
They're Scottish, aren't they? Oh,
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know
they're uncivilized.
Uncivilized and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, it stems from that kind of thing, I mean, it's kind of like
it goes way
a
back
xenophobic
to this.
Type thing. It goes way back to this and before all this.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 1745 is when the last kind of like uprising happened. Bonnie Prince Charlie was was Charles Edward Stuart, and he's famous nowadays as Bonnie Prince Charlie because he was leading the Jacobites,
Oh, yeah.
But he didn't really lead them. He was in exile.
Oh.
He was in France for most of it, trying to get money from Louis XIV, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Louis XIII? Someone, he was trying to get, the French king was funding all this because France has been known to there's British people, we hate them, so, anything to get them out of here, So he was in there, and of course it failed. The Battle of Culloden was, because they thought, we're going to win this one because the bulk of the British army was fighting in mainland Europe for the War of the Austrian Succession. Mm-hmm. So they thought, they're all away, it's like there's only a thing. But the British army were notoriously well organised at that time.
Yeah.
And powerful, so they were, they'd station troops in Scotland, and when Culloden happened, the Jacobites had all they had was claymores.
Oh, yeah.
And kilts.
Right.
And the British army had cannons and muskets,
yeah. And so she has sort of a connection, she feels, with the English army because she's just come back in her time period. From a war, and being with the English army or the British military.
And she was all like, this is cute, they're my people, I'm English,
But she quickly realizes that this is not her English army.
No, and the British army of the World War II was a vastly different force to the Redcoats, as they were called,
And so she finds herself in sort of a conundrum because she's starting to sympathize with the Scots, who just want to be their own people, basically.
Yeah.
And,
And they had their own laws and everything, I mean, it's as they still do today, even though they're still part of the Union.
And so she wants to, kind of warn them about the future, what's going to happen, and actually she does try, but of course they're just like, you don't know. You're just a woman. What do you know?
Yes, I mean, of course it was that kind of thing at that time too. It's like, women and politics, and women don't talk, and they're just there to look pretty or whatever,
Yeah.
And
my thing about this show so far, I mean, like I said, we're 6-7 episodes possibly in. I can't really
I think
remember.
we're on the 8th episode, maybe.
Is, to me, she's not trying that hard to get home.
She's not. She's kind of having a little adventure. She's having a wee adventure. She
It's
is
just like,
in the 70s.
she's being watched. She's, they're gonna get her if they find that she's, trying to escape or whatever. But it's just like,
because they don't know where she comes from. I mean, she's kind of like, because her husband in the 40s worked in intelligence and told her, oh, it's, you've got, when you tell a story to an interrogator, you've got to keep as close to the truth as you can.
Yeah.
So, you don't get tripped up.
Yeah, so she's
But, she said, oh, I've got family in France and I'm just looking to get back there, and I was mugged and I lost my horse and like the British, the Black Jack Randall doesn't believe her. And neither does the clan. The clan don't believe her, but they need her because she's pretty good at healing and stuff, And so, until they figure out what her deal is, because they think she's a spy for the English at first. Yeah. But then I think they realize, oh no, she's not really, she's just, she's...
If she is, then she's like...
She's the worst spy,
Yeah. Oh my God. I think we need to wrap it up.
I think we need to wrap it up here, because
we need to end this so we can go and continue watching this show, if we're being honest.
Because we're kind of halfway into it. Yeah. But anyway, what happened to Bonnie Prince Charlie?
Oh.
Was...
But Bonnie Prince Charlie, let's
just wrap him up for a start. After Culloden was finished, he kind of like wound up the Scots anyway, so he had no support with them.
Oh, yeah.
And then his father died years later, and he was still trying to get the Pope to recognise him as Charles III.
Okay.
And it was like the Pope was like, no, there's George IV, or George IV was on the throne by that time, I think. Yeah. And so he died in 1788 in Rome in exile. Very bitter, very sad that he lost.
Yeah.
The end.
The end.
Yes.
Wow.
Well.
I don't know what else to say about it.
Poor old Bonnie Prince Charlie wasn't so bonny at the end, was he?
Some story there, Dominic. Oh my God. You guys, this quarantine stuff. This quarantine life.
We're just going mad here.
Let us know on social media. This has nothing to do with Outlander. But let us know on social media what kinds of stuff you guys are doing to basically stay sane.
Stay sane.
Because, I saw someone the other day post something about the fact that they can stay indoors for days on end and not think anything of it. Not they just realize, I haven't been out in like 5 days,
I mean, we're on lockdown. It's advised to stay in your house and everything. But really, people aren't going to do that,
Well, I hope they do. And I hope you do. And I hope you're washing your hands. And I hope you're keeping your old people safe. And everybody's happy and healthy. And I think we're going to all get through this.
Going to get through this.
Yeah. I think it's going to be okay. We just have to,
be all right.
not panic and find things to do, like listen to Tina Butty podcast.
Yeah, you can listen to all our podcasts.
Watch Outlander. Get some work done.
Between those things.
Find some space, do some exercise, do some meditating.
Well, you can get some work done and listen to our podcast. You can't watch Outlander and get work done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it depends on how good you are at multitasking, but...
I don't think anybody's that good at multitasking.
But yeah, so anyway, I'm just rambling now, so we're gonna go, and as always, we appreciate you guys for listening, appreciate your support. Leave us a review if you would like to
review us.
Yeah, if you would like to support us further, because reviews are going to help other people find our podcast.
Okay.
And yeah, that's like the most important thing. We also have a Patreon page if you want to check that out, where we have some Patreon or patron only podcasts available on there.
We just released one yesterday.
Yeah. And our website and all our social medias, and you know the spiel.
Yep.
And other than that, have a nice day, and we will talk to you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.